So now we're going to break down the journey and look at the ways we can maximize our growth. Now, it's worth understanding that whilst we all have an individual journey and soul assignment, how we achieve the growth to get to that assignment is identical. So whilst our human experiences may differ in many ways, the beliefs we need to release to reach our potential are the same. You see, consciousness has an equative formulation to its movement. So when we know how it formulates on either side of our experience, we know the result of its motion. And through knowing this, we can determine the factors of its cause and effect. That in return gives us the control to manipulate our reality back to its original intent. So when we utilize the knowledge of its motion, we gain more control over its velocity, putting us in a position to make our journeys less passive and more progressive, so we can move its motion through our actions in the direction we know will be beneficial for our growth. So to utilize its motion, we need to understand its terms of use. And its fundamental order of play is based on the very core of what makes us human, our values. So the speed of our growth is dependent on the level of human value we choose to give ourselves and others. Because full spectrum consciousness is the embodiment of our values working within cohesion with one another. But to keep that cohesion in place, there needs to be a system of calculation, accountability. So every level of our growth is focused on getting the cohesion of our human values into place. And every level of our journey opens a wider depth of accountability we need to hold ourselves for. Our personal identity needs us to be accountable for the lack of value we gave to ourselves and the people we blamed for that. Our social identity needs us to be accountable for the lack of value we allowed our social narrative to inflict onto us, and the biases we created of others due to those narratives. Our systematic identity needs us to be accountable for the lack of value our system creates in the world. How global inequality comes from the external validation it pushes us to crave, and how the quality of life we are living comes directly from the inequality of someone else. And the concept of money needs us to see we never needed to trade with one another. We already had the integrity within our values to regulate a free system that would be based on sharing. Money has franchised our lack of value. So the thought to action process that created the concept of money is the same thought to action process we were born to survive on: energy. So the speed of our growth is dependent on the level of human value we choose to give ourselves and others. And the fearlessness to express that value is the force of energy we create that updates our protective mechanisms to attract new realities. But to move consciousness to a level where it provides physical energetic stability needs us to understand the integrity of value needed. And the location of this integrity is within our senses. Our bodies are already wired with the principles of what our human values are. So by listening to our senses and acting upon them, we are already being directed to our highest path. So if the motion of consciousness moves and evolves off of the back of us aligning to our integral values, then the essence of who we are has always stemmed from love. with our senses being the direction to return us back to our human value. So maximizing our growth needs us to be attuned to our senses, as it's when we know how to interpret our visions and sensations that we can make spiritual moves our physical reality doesn't quite represent yet. The observation of our senses is our transcendental state that brings our focus into our present moment, so we can tune into the direction of our senses before the thoughts of our protective mechanisms try to defend our current reality. So without healing and processing every step of our personal identity, we can't understand how the motion and terms of consciousness works within our own reality. A huge part of managing growth is learning the cycle of movement between our spiritual senses and physical reality. This is what spiritual maturity needs: day to night consistency, and a level of discipline spiritual practices alone can't achieve. Because practices allow us to tap into our potential. They don't break down the walls of our current reality. Consciously adjusting our reality through our actions is how we create the cracks. And knowing the actions to make comes from the integrity of our senses. So the pathway to creating our new world order is laid out within the integrity of our senses. The level of accountability we choose to hold ourselves for will define the level of sensitivity our receptivity will create. But getting to full spectrum consciousness needs us to take full accountability for every conscious and unconscious decision we've made. Because we need every part of our sensitivity to read our senses. So without full accountability, we don't claim our sensitivity. And without our sensitivity, we don't gain the attunement needed to evolve physical realities. So this is why our journeys can become delayed, where we either don't grow or we rely on the paths of others to learn spirituality. But relying on others only allows us to understand consciousness to the level of accountability they were able to take. So whilst some will find the truth of life and some will not, knowing how to decipher information can only come from the truth we have understood within our own journey. So learning how consciousness moves within our own reality is the most effective way to grow and take control of our journey. But knowing how to do this for ourselves needs us to start from the level where our foundation of understanding is created, our personal identity. So let's delve deeper. This is Reaching Full Spectrum Consciousness with Vanessa Nash.